Hello, everyone. My name is Brian Gardner. I am a developer and instructor at Big Nerd Ranch, and today I get to talk about Jetpack Compose. So as Marcos was mentioning, Compose is still pretty rough around the edges, let's call it. It is a dev release currently, so pre-alpha even. So things are changing quite a bit, but overall, I like it. It's a really fun way to build user interfaces for Android. So the goal for this talk, I suppose I could present, is I'm basically going to try to recreate the list view from Gmail. So there will be an individual list item for each email. I'll try to add a toolbar at the top, floating action button, as well as the navigation drawer on the side. So I think Compose is one of those things that it really is a lot better to kind of see it worked or see an example worked through. So let's do that. So I have a little screenshot of the main screen that I'm trying to build here, and I have my studio open. So the first thing that you're going to need is you're going to need a specific version of Android Studio. So Android Studio 4.1 is the one you're going to want. This is currently in Canary, but it's the only version that has the actual Compose tooling. The 4.0 beta doesn't have it, 3.6 doesn't have it, so make sure you get Studio 4.1. The next thing you're going to need is some various dependencies. So inside of your Android block, you can add these compose options. This is just a Kotlin compiler version that you're going to need in order to get compose working. You run into some weird issues if you don't have this compiler version specified, so you'll want that. And then there's a Kotlin compiler extension version as well, which you can see this is where the dev release comes in. What you'll also need is the actual dependencies themselves. So there are sort of two versions that you'll need. One is the Compose compiler and runtime. So this just makes sure that Compose can build and actually run when you're using it. And the second is the UI libraries. So this actually includes like the text, the buttons, stuff like that. So that's mostly what you'll be using when you're actually building out your application, whereas the compiler and runtime just make sure everything actually works. So in the interest of time, this will be a little bit like a cooking show. It's a little bit of stuff made fresh and a good bit of stuff I've prepared earlier. So one of the things I've prepared earlier is a data class that represents an email. So I have things like the sender text, if the email is important, which shows this little icon over here, the receipt time, subject text, body text, stuff like that. So that just prevents me from having to build that out. Most of my time is going to be spent building the actual email view itself. So the individual row item is what I'm mostly going to be focusing on. So with Compose, there's no XML, thankfully. Everything is going to be built inside of Kotlin. So when you want to create something that shows on the screen, you need to create a function that's annotated with the @composable annotation. This tells Compose, hey, this thing is actually a view that needs to get displayed on the screen. So in this case, I just have a top level email view, which will take in my email. And as I go through, I'll actually build this thing out. Now, with Compose, I really like to start sort of bottom up. You start at your kind of most basic view components and build your way up. So I'll start there. So starting at the top, we could start with the sender text right here. So when you want to display text in Compose, there's a text function. So you just say, hey, I have some text, and I can set the text to my sender. So that will actually render whatever text you send in. Now, if I want to actually see this working, there's a couple ways I can do this. One, I could add this into my activity, throw my sender in there, run it, display it in an emulator, but that's a little bit slow. But what you can do instead is there is a preview option. So you can create a preview function annotated with @preview and @composable, and this will render this nice little preview pane over here on the right-hand side of Studio. So right now I'm just rendering my email view with a bogus email, but there's nothing in my email view, so nothing is rendering. But if I did want to render something, I could just say, hey, render my sender text. You do have to build every time to get the preview to actually work. Hopefully this shouldn't take too long, as I was working on this a little bit earlier, but there you go. So you can say, hey, my email view preview is getting rendered and I have some text getting displayed. That's great. But say, what if I wanted to modify this text? What if the default style doesn't work? Well, the good thing is the API for Compose is very fluent. So it has a lot of niceties. So it's like, hey, I want a style, I can provide a text style. The text style class has pretty much everything you would need to modify your text: color, font size, letter spacing, text decoration. Like I said, there's a lot of stuff. I'm not going to go through everything here. I'm just going to maybe tweak the color a bit, and maybe the font size, maybe you say 20 SP. So color here is a specific object. You can pass in a hex value if you want, and it'll configure that appropriately, or you can just use one of these defaults. And in my case, most of the defaults are going to work. So I just use that. The sizing here is actually pretty nice. So they provided this SP extension function on, I think, doubles, ints, and maybe number. But this basically will convert this to the style or the scale independent pixels. So it'll respect both the density of the screen and the user's accessibility settings. Now, if I refresh this, the preview isn't actually going to change because the color is the same and the text size, it's getting scaled anyways. So you're not really going to see much difference, but I messed with this before and 20 pixels seemed all right. So what I can do next is I need to provide my important icon. So this one, I already added a vector asset for this. So to display any kind of resource, you're going to want to use the icon function. You just provide an asset, and there's a vector resource function you can use to load a vector asset. So this is my important icon. Go back to code. So this will just load this asset and put it in something that can load an icon. So what I can do next is the sender text and the icon need to be displayed next to each other, along with the receipt time way over here on the right. So what I can do is I need to create another composable function to basically contain these things. I could put everything in my email view, but that might make things a little messy. So I can create another composable function, maybe call it email header, pass in the string, and then this is where I'll actually configure the important icon, sender text, and the receipt time. Now, everything needs to be displayed in a row here, and fortunately, there's a function called row, so I can just say, hey, I just want my sender with my sender string, and in front of that, I need my important icon. So I can then update this to be my email header, email sender. And then if I refresh the preview, it should show the important button in front of my text, which it does. There's a couple things wrong here. Number one, the color's wrong. Number two, the icon is actually a little bit above the text. So I can modify the color of an icon. So there's a tint property, which is really nice. I could try yellow for this. It doesn't quite look right. So I did some experimenting and just grabbed the color for the actual gold. I think it's FFFDD663. That should tint the icon. So I'll just go ahead and run that. And then my email header, I need everything to kind of be aligned in the row. So there's a vertical gravity property that you can provide and say, hey, please center all of the contents vertically for me. So that should kind of move everything a little bit. The icon will move down just a little bit to be in line with the sender text. So the next thing I need is the receipt time. There's nothing super interesting about the receipt time, so I went ahead and implemented this already. This just takes in the time that I want it to display as a string. The reason this is a string and not like a date or a long or something is these are kind of my lowest level view components, so they should be as dumb as possible. They shouldn't do any sort of formatting or anything like that. That should be reserved for like a view model or a presenter. By the time your data hits the view layer, it should be ready to display immediately. So I'm just assuming that will be formatted for me. And then I said, hey, show me some text, and then give it a style. If I want to add this to my row, I can just add the receipt time. Oops, it's my header. So I actually need to pass in the receipt time to my header. Get that, modify that. Here we go. Then I need to pass in the receipt time. Space that out a little bit. It's a little easier to see. Rebuild that. And that should display the receipt time next to my sender text, which it does, but everything's a little bit squished together. So there's a couple of reasons for this. Number one, the row assumes that it only is kind of a wrap content width, so it's kind of squishing everything together. So what you can do to modify that is there's a modifier argument on pretty much every composable function. So modifiers are how you add things like padding, setting the size of something, filling up the space. So that's what I'm going to do here. So I can say, hey, please have this row fill up the max width. So it'll basically fill up its parent. So if I refresh the preview, we'll see that the row does in fact fill up all the space. Oop, not height. There we go. Fill up the width. So that'll fill up the max width, but we still kind of have the same problem in that the receipt time is still smushed up against the sender text. And how we fix this is we need to provide a modifier to the sender to tell it to take up the full width or the remaining space. So I'm going to need another parameter here. And inside of the row, this lambda basically is all of the child views you want inside of your row. But specifically, this is a row scope, which you can kind of see from this hint here. Now, the row scope defines some custom modifiers, one of which is a weight. So this basically says, hey, sender, please take up whatever remaining space is left. I need to provide the actual modifier parameter here. And I want to go ahead and provide a default just in case. So my sender doesn't have to be used from a row if it doesn't need to be. So providing this weight to the sender will basically force it to take up whatever remaining space is left. If it'll work. Oh, I need to actually apply the modifier. That would help. There we go. So once the modifier is applied to the sender, the text will basically expand out as far as it can and push the receipt time all the way over to the right, which is great. So that's kind of the email header. Next, I'm going to focus on building out the actual email view itself. So the next thing is the header is stacked on top of the subject and body text. So in the header, I used a row to stack things as a row. Fortunately, there's also a column that I can use to stack things vertically. So we say, hey, have an email header, pass in a subject and a body. Now these, like the receipt text, there's nothing super exciting going on here. It's just declaring a text, setting a font size and a color. The body is actually a carbon copy of the subject. So nothing too much to look into there. But you get to see the preview refresh and then actually see it displayed in a column. So we have things kind of getting the email views coming together at this point. Next is we need the little star to show up. And if you look closely, the star is actually in a row with the subject and body text because they're both ellipsized. So the subject and body are in a column because they're vertical, and then that is inside of a row so that the star can be in the right place. So I can add this stuff. So say, hey, row, add a column. We'll dump the subject and body text into here. And then I need a star to go in the row as well. So I have that. So say email.starred. The star at this point is very similar to the important icon. It's loading a vector resource. It's getting tinted. The only difference is I'm modifying the color of the star based on if the email has been starred or not. So I can just use this if logic. Thanks Kotlin for not having me set that twice. But once I run the star, you see kind of a similar thing. So the star is smushed over up against the subject and body text because they are only taking up as much space as they need. So I need to go back and have the column take up plenty of space. So we'll use that modifier weight trick. And another thing is the star needs to be in the bottom over here. So in a similar trick, we can use the actually the vertical alignment or gravity. Say align the star to the bottom, or align the row to the bottom rather. The subject and body are not going to be impacted by that because they're already taking up the full height, but the star will get pushed down to the bottom. Now, another thing that needs to happen is the star needs to be clickable because right now it's not responding to any kind of click events. So what I can do is the star needs to basically take in a listener and fire off the listener when it gets clicked on. So we can just say like add an on click lambda, no parameters, doesn't return anything. This is your typical click listener here. And then you can wrap your icon in an icon button. Let's name that. Maybe it's just mad. No. Oh, there we go. So we basically just say, hey, the button adds a clickable interface around our icon, so it'll fire the click listener whenever it gets tapped, so that I then need to provide a click listener here. This brings up another question. My email currently is immutable because it's a data class, but everything is a val, so I can't set any of this data. So what if I need to? There's a couple ways of dealing with state in Compose. One way is you can update your property to a var if you need the setter, and then say, hey, this is a model. So you add the model annotation. What this does is whenever a composable function takes in a model, anytime it accesses the properties of that model, it is registered to observe changes to those properties. So since I'm passing in the starred property, my email view will update if the property changes. So what I can do is, oh, I actually need a property here. So what I can do instead, this is a better example. So instead of an icon button, what you can do is there's a toggleable that you can do. So instead of just responding to a click, toggleable is basically a click with a state. So we could say it needs the initial value, and there's an on value change function. This is different because on value change requires a Boolean. So this is the flag on and off. So we'll just update that. So now our star can modify its color based on the star, the on star click, and we should be able to react to it. This is going to be mad because I need to finish this. But I can update my email and this should be happy. So I can try to run the app over here on an emulator. So we get my little email list, and when I click on the star, it updates, which is cool. It does work. Another option you have if you don't want a mutable class here, you can keep everything vals, but you would need to wrap your property in something called a mutable state. So this is basically saying, hey, this is my state instead of the email itself, and then I can pull out the email from the state. Now, accessing the value of a state works similarly to your model. Any changes made to the state are going to cause your view to recompose. It's just a little bit more complex. I'll need a new email. Fortunately, since I'm using the data class, I can just copy it and override the fields I want, and then I can set the value like so. That will cause it to update. My email preview needs an update because it's still expecting an email. So if you need a state, there's a mutable state of function, and that'll basically wrap your model object in a state. You pass that along. I'll need this same logic in my activity to actually run the thing. So I'm now passing in a state instead of the email itself, and I can still update the star. So it's still responding to clicks, and it's still updating my view state. I like this a little bit more just because it makes me be very explicit about state updates instead of having like a mutable class, but that's kind of a personal preference right now. So in the interest of time, I think we'll keep this about where it is. I'll actually just add some padding. Let's do 16 dips. So that will just add some padding around my email view, just to be a little bit more material and make it look a little bit nicer. So there we go, got some padding. So that's the email view. So it's fairly easy to build all of these things from the bottom up. If you want to display a list, I'm gonna make another composable function called email list that takes in a list of emails. And if y'all are familiar with Android, you probably know about recycler view, and it's got a fair bit of pieces that you need to kind of put together. Fortunately, making a list in Compose is a lot easier. You just use this adapter list thing, pass in your list of items, and then you just provide this lambda, which is the child. It passes in each item that needs to basically render on the screen. So it's similar to recycler view. It'll only request the items it actually needs to display. I'll make a state, and then I can return the email view. So recycler view would probably be a lot more code. In this case, it's 4 lines of code. I can go over to my main activity. I have a little function to generate my list of emails. Let's see, mutable list. So I get my email list. I'll create a mutable state. And then I'll do the email list. Oh, actually, I don't need a state here. I just need the list. Makes that a little bit easier. And I can run the app and it will actually show the list. There we go. So we have the list here. Performance, not great. If I'm honest, it's fairly clunky and it's a little slow. So that's one issue. Another issue is that the the state updates do not currently work with adapter list, so that's a really big issue. I've tried to fix this by moving the state up to the email list and then having the email list recompose, but that didn't work either. So there's currently a bug ticket open for this, and the compose folks are working on it, so hopefully soon it'll be good. But it is what it is for now. So next, I want an app bar up at the top. So I just have an email app bar composable. The component you're going to want to use is the top app bar. There's also a bottom app bar if you want bottom navigation. You just need to provide things like a title, navigation icon if you want it, actions if you need those. So maybe my text is, I don't know, faux mail because it's some fake email. My navigation icon, I can use an icon button for this one. Wrap this in an icon, vector assets, and we'll just leave the actions out for now. So this will basically make a toolbar for the top of your app. It'll provide your little navigation icon on the left, the title right next to it. When you want to add these things all together, you could try and like make it yourself, like put everything in a column and do all that, but fortunately there's a better way. So typically what you'll want to do is you'll want to make a composable function specifically for that screen. So in this case, I have an email list screen composable. Takes in my list of emails, takes in some navigation items, which I'll get to in a minute, but you're going to use a scaffold. Now the scaffold is the thing that kind of puts everything together. So you can provide your app bar in the top app bar property, and then the last lambda is the body. So this is just whatever you need to display in the application. So if I update my app to do the screen, I'll pass in the list, and I also have a function to generate navigation just so that works. This will show you the top app bar at the top of the screen. So you got your toolbar. You can modify the app bar however you want. You can provide like custom views inside for the text and everything. So it's really up to you what you want to do with it. Scaffold has a lot of other stuff that you can do. Most notably is the navigation drawer. So this is a rather large class, which is all for my email navigation. So it uses an adapter list. It has a sealed class to represent the different item types. It sort of switches across those and returns the different composable functions that are needed for that. I have a preview in here so I can actually show you what that'll look like. So this is the actual preview that'll get displayed. I have a link to all this so I can post everything. But in your scaffolds, come on. You pass in some drawer content. So this is where you want your email navigation. Pass in the nav items. And one other thing you're going to need is you're going to need some state. So there's a different way to make state. So you can use this state lambda. This is a shorthand way of making a mutable state. But the scaffold specifically needs a scaffold state. So this is like, is the drawer open or closed? And can you use gestures to open the drawer? So far we have gestures enabled, and we just need to pass this to the scaffold. Now this state, what it does that's different from before is it not only returns the state itself, but it returns a listener function. So you can use that kind of as an easy way of updating. But I should be able to use my gesture to open the drawer. It goes up and down. So looks good. Swipe it closed. Not gonna deal with the nav icon quite yet. Check out the code if you want to see how that works. I think the last thing I wanted to show is probably everybody's favorite material button, which is the floating action button. So there's a floating action button class you can use. Takes an on-click listener. You can throw an icon in it and it works. You can also use text if you want, or realistically any composable. It might just look a little bit weird if it's like too large or something. But all this really does is give you the style of a floating action button. It grabs the primary color from your theme, makes it circular, and stuff like that. When you want to use it, you just add the floating action button, say new email button. Not gonna respond to clicks just yet, but this will add it to the scaffold. It'll position it in the bottom right of the screen, and it gets you little ripple animations. There's also a position if you want. Which one is it? So there's the scaffold has a fab position. You can center it if you want, if that's what your design works with. So it'll just go right there. There's also center docked and end docked. So the scaffold also will work with a bottom navigation, and the dock will basically like cut out the bottom navigation for the floating action button. So if you want that in your design, it's pretty much included by default in Jetpack Compose. So that is pretty much my demo. Let me see. If you do want the code for this, I have a bit.ly link here, just Jetpack-compose-webinar. This will link you to the GitHub repo where the code is. I included a little bit of information about myself, as well as a bunch of links for if you're interested in learning more about Jetpack Compose. One great resource is the Kotlin Lang Slack. If you're in there, there's a Compose channel, which is great. There's some Google folks in there, so it's really easy to get feedback, like see what's new, what's working, and they are very open to bug tickets. So if you find bugs, please report them. Next, about me. So again, I'm Brian Gardner. You can follow me on Twitter if you like, or check out my website. I've been doing a blog series about Jetpack Compose. I think there's about 10 articles currently. So if you want a little bit more in-depth information, you can check those out. Also, again, I work for Big Nerd Ranch. We do consulting, Android consulting, iOS consulting. A lot of y'all probably know us from our books. I'm actually the co-author on the 4th edition Android programming guide. So check that out. There's a lot of Jetpack goodness in there. And we teach classes as well. So hit us up if you're interested. But thanks for watching.
Brian, fantastic job. Thank you so much for being here with us today. It was really exciting to see that in action and the way you presented that. I'm pretty sure if anybody's like me, they were pretty much glued to the screen the entire time. Loved it. Thank you so much for doing that. You're about to play question roulette as well. And so we've got Uli showing the screen of the most popular question. So I'm going to let you fire away on that.
Yeah, so top one, what have you found to be the benefits of Compose versus XML? I think the biggest benefit is XML is, like, I'm not a big fan. Like, it works, don't get me wrong. I tried Onco when it came out with the like JSON style stuff, and it wasn't great. I like being able to have like autocomplete in there. You can easily check the documentation for like the text component, say. You can see, all right, what exactly are all of the properties that this thing has? I don't have to go to developer.android.com and look up the documentation. It's just a very fluent interface. I like it a lot more than XML. I think it's a lot cleaner. Yes, you're going to have a lot more Kotlin code in there because you're going to have to create all of your views in Kotlin, but I think it's kind of worth it because you're gaining Kotlin code, but you're losing XML. So I'm a fan. Let's see, mobile development is shifting to declarative UIs, Flutter, Swift UI, and Compose. How mature do you see Compose, let's say, in 1 year? I don't see it being release or production ready in 1 year, maybe beta if we're lucky. I'm hoping it goes alpha a little bit later this year, at least just out of dev, so things are a little bit more stable. But I'd say we get beta next year, maybe release by like Android Dev Summit next year. Fingers crossed. I dream one day we can use Compose alongside Swift UI to build cross-platform mobile apps using Kotlin multi-platform. Do you think this day will come? Yes, I definitely do. The nice thing about Compose is that it's open source and you can basically look at all the commits that they're doing to the project in sort of real time. One recent commit, they were specifically adding functionality for desktop UIs. So I don't think there's a reason to do that if they're not targeting some sort of multi-platform. So I have a gut feeling that Compose along with Kotlin multi-platform will kind of be a sort of cross-platformy way to build applications. Best live coding demo, thank you very much. I was super nervous about this. I haven't really done live coding before, so appreciate it. Is it possible to combine regular UI widgets and composable functions widgets? Is it a good idea? Yes, there is ways of combining both composable widgets and regular platform widgets. There are some things that just aren't in Compose yet. Off the top of my head, I can't think of an example, but there are ways of basically saying, all right, so in a platform UI, like this container holds a composable widget and vice versa. So in this composable function, this is like a platform widget I want to add in there. So is it a good idea? At this point, we're kind of forced to. So if there's something that's not available, you kind of have to use it. But in the future, when everything is composed, I don't think you would want to go that route. What are the differences in terms of performance between native apps UI and Compose apps UI? That's actually a good question. I'm not entirely sure how Compose is built under the hood. I want to say it's native component. Well, no, they're not native components, I don't think, because they're not platform types. So they're probably doing something similar to Flutter, sort of redoing it, maybe. I haven't noticed any real performance difference except for the adapter list that's real clunky right now. But they keep making it better after each release. So I definitely think things will get smoother as we go forward. Let's see, how do you do navigation with Compose? Right now, it is very similar to the way you do regular navigation. You would have to like pass a listener function down that fires off an intent or whatever. There is talk about Compose working very closely with the navigation architecture component, but that stuff is not out yet. But I think that will make it much easier when it does come out. It'll be a lot easier instead of kind of fiddling with listeners and stuff like that. How does Compose compare to Flutter's widgets? So my experience with Flutter is very, very limited. But from what I've seen, it seems very similar. You're declaring things in code. The state like refreshing seems kind of similar. The one major difference is Compose doesn't have the hot reload, unfortunately. So you do have to like build the project and wait for the preview to catch up, or like run the app and wait for the emulator. So that is one way Flutter is a little bit better. When do you recommend to use Compose for small views, whole screens? I would recommend it for like an entire screen, at least if like when it gets better, like beta at least. But if you're gonna go with Compose, I see no reason not to go like all the way with it. How's testing with Compose? Yes, I don't actually know. As of right now, I don't believe there are any testing tools with Compose, so that is kind of a bummer. I do think that like making UIs the way I was doing it, sort of bottom up. I don't know much about React either, but it seems very similar to like React components. So I'm assuming the way you test React components, it'll be very similar to the way you test Compose components. And if your views are very dumb, then they should be like fairly easy to test, or kind of pointless to test. I wouldn't test my sender function because it just displays some text. Why? Good question. When we can create a view in XML in a few minutes, why spend an hour to achieve the same design? Not considering build and push, what we try to fix. My main thing is, again, I'm not a big fan of the XML. Yes, I'm very comfortable with it. I can like whip up XML designs very quickly, but not having to do XML makes me happy inside. So I'm a fan of that. Also, like I mentioned before, not having to dig into like the documentation if I need something. Like if I don't know an attribute, I have to go look up the documentation because I can't really just find it in Android Studio. Whereas with Compose, I can like click through to the declaration for the text or the adapter list and like find the actual things that I need there. Where to keep the reusable composable functions in the activity that uses it or some common class or somewhere else. I would do these very similarly to a regular custom view. So you'd have your own class for that custom view, most likely declaring the main function up at the top. So for like my email view, that would be the function at the very top. All of the functions below that would just be specific for that one particular view. So the sender text doesn't need to really be used anywhere else except the email view, so it should be in the same file, likely private since it's not needed. Definitely don't want to keep it in the activity because activities tend to be a little bloated as it is. So just keep them in their own files. Oop, that was not the right one. So I think what it was is with the creation of Compose, will it work with data binding? I'm not sure about data binding. I kind of doubt it, just because it kind of solves a different problem. Data binding's whole thing is like you're going from XML to a Java representation of your view, and you don't want to have to call find view by ID for everything and like call all of the setters. Compose doesn't really work that way because you're kind of declaring everything anyways. Like data binding, I don't think is necessarily needed for that. Are you enjoying Valorant? Yes, I am. I am not good at it at all, but it's very fun. Does Compose help with setting up screen relative layout / constraints? I haven't looked into that too much, so I'm not entirely sure. Compose is going to get support for constraint layout, so you can actually build a constraint layout in Compose. That's one case that I'm not a big fan with Compose right now, just because you basically have to build the constraint set manually. There's no graphical editor for it yet, which is not fun. So maybe they'll add a graphical editor for that at some point. But at this point, I would kind of stay away from constraint layout. Sharing styles between composables. Yeah, so the styles for Compose are different than your typical platform styles. So as far as I know, there's no way of like grabbing an XML style and applying it to a Compose function, unfortunately. So you kind of have to declare the styles manually. I mean, you could create like a master file of all of your styles and put them in there. Another thing you can do is you can theme your application. So all apps get like the material theme at the top level, but it's very like restricting right now. You get like header 1 through 6, like subtitle text, body text, stuff like that. So that's one area I would like to see Compose get a little bit better.
Brian, let's take one more question, okay?
All right. Have you tried Splitties from Lewis? It's better than Onco. I have not. I'll actually have to look into that. I didn't really like Onco. I didn't feel like it had any benefit over XML except the fact that it wasn't XML. So I'll have to take a look at Splitties. So,
all right.
Thanks for all the
Brian,
questions, everyone.
Thank you so much. That was a fantastic presentation.